I used to think I had everything. A husband who checked all the boxes. Loyal, steady, dependable. The kind of man everyone said I was lucky to have. And I believed them. We had the house, the weekend getaways, the yearly anniversary dinners that looked perfect in pictures. But at some point, without even noticing, I stopped feeling anything. The smiles became automatic. The kisses felt like routines. And every time I looked at him across the dinner table, I felt like I was staring at a stranger I used to know. Didn't happen all at once. The emptiness grew slowly. At first, it was just me scrolling through my phone while he talked about work. Then it was choosing to stay late at the office instead of coming home. Sex. Where? And when it did happen, I felt more alone afterward than I did before. I'd lie there, pretending I was tired, pretending I was satisfied, pretending I was okay. But I wasn't. And then there was Darren. He wasn't even supposed to be a factor. He was just the guy from marketing I saw in meetings once in a while. He made jokes when no one else did, laughed too loud, and always smelled like cedarwood cologne and expensive coffee. I never looked at him twice. Until I did. Started harmless. A joke over email. Then a long conversation after a company lunch. He remembered things I said. Asked questions like he actually cared about the answer. And when I laughed around him, I realized I hadn't laughed like that in months. Maybe longer. Felt easy. Natural. Dangerous. The first time we were alone, I noticed how close he stood. Not creepy close, just aware. He listened when I talked about how exhausted I was. About how I didn't feel like myself anymore. And he didn't try to fix me. He just nodded like he understood. That's what made it worse. The way he looked at me like I was still someone worth paying attention to. I should have pulled back. I knew the signs. The way my pulse quickened when I got a message from him. The extra care I took with my hair when I knew I'd see him. But I didn't stop. I let it build. There was a moment late one evening, when he brushed my hand as we reached for the same pen. Sounds so stupid now, but I froze. My skin buzzed for minutes afterward. That one touch, so subtle, felt more intimate than anything I'd had with my husband in weeks. That night, I lay awake thinking about Darren. Imagining his hands, his voice, his lips. And I hated myself for it. But I didn't stop. I didn't confess. I didn't even try to forget. I told myself I hadn't done anything wrong. That it was just flirting. Just attention. Just harmless. But deep down I knew. Things like this don't stay harmless for long. We didn't plan it. That's the truth. One moment we were talking in the break room, and the next he was brushing my hair off my face like it was the most natural thing in the world. My breath caught, but I didn't move away. He didn't kiss me, not yet. He just stared at me like he was trying to memorize everything. I felt seen, really seen, for the first time in what felt like forever. The next few days were a blur of stolen glances and messages we shouldn't have sent. We weren't even trying to hide it well. It was like we were both pulled by something stronger than guilt, stronger than logic. I told myself I'd stop, that I just needed to feel wanted for a little while. But every time I said that, I'd find myself looking for him again. One evening we stayed late after a project meeting. Everyone else had left. I should have walked out too. Instead I lingered. I think we both knew something was going to happen. He leaned in, paused, and gave me one last chance to say no. I didn't. His lips were on mine before I could think. It wasn't gentle or slow. It was desperate. Hungry. Like we'd been holding back for too long. My hands moved before I could stop them. I gripped his shirt, felt his chest, his heartbeat. He pulled me closer, and I didn't resist. There was no hesitation. I knew exactly what I was doing. I felt him harden in my hand, and that was the moment everything shifted. It wasn't just flirting anymore. It was real, physical, and it was happening. In that split second I had a choice. I could have stepped away. I could have said this is too far. But I didn't. Kept going. I let the weight of my loneliness justify what I wanted in that moment. I convinced myself I deserved this. That it was just once. That my marriage could survive one slip. When it was over, we didn't say anything. There was no romantic afterglow. No cuddling or sweet nothings. Just silence. I got dressed, avoided his eyes and left. My legs felt weak, and my chest ached in a way I couldn't explain. It wasn't guilt. Not yet. It was more like dread. On the drive home, I stared at the traffic lights like they were the only things grounding me to reality. My phone buzzed, but I didn't check it. I didn't need to. I already knew who it was. And I already knew what I had done. I didn't cry. Not then. I just walked inside, kissed my husband on the cheek like nothing had happened, and told him I was tired. He smiled and said he missed me today. I lied and said I missed him too. I woke up the next morning with a tightness in my chest I couldn't shake. The weight of what I'd done settled in like a bruise, not sharp, just constant and spreading. My husband was making coffee in the kitchen, humming to himself, and I stood there watching him, wondering how I could ever look him in the eye again. I wasn't afraid he'd find out. I was afraid I'd never see him the same way again. Or myself. Everything felt different. He handed me a cup, kissed my forehead and asked how I slept. I said fine, and hated the way my voice sounded, thin, practiced, hollow. I wanted him to notice something was wrong. I wanted him to ask harder questions, to see the guilt crawling under my skin. But he didn't. He trusted me, and that hurt more than if he'd accused me. At work, I avoided Darren. I couldn't even say his name in my head without feeling sick. He sent one message. "You okay?" I stared at it for hours, then deleted it. There was nothing to say. We crossed a line, and now we had to live on the other side of it. Every little thing became a reminder. My wedding ring felt heavier. The sound of my husband laughing made me flinch. I found myself zoning out in meetings, replaying what happened over and over, searching for a version of the story where I stopped it. There wasn't one. I let it happen because I wanted it. That was the part one couldn't hide from. I started pulling away from him without realizing it. My answers became shorter. Kept turning away in bed. I said I was stressed, tired, overwhelmed. He believed me. Of course he did. I was good at lying now. Then there were the near misses. A message left open too long. My phone in the wrong spot. One night he asked me who Darren was because I'd said his name in my sleep. I laughed it off, said he was someone from work. He didn't question it, but I saw it. Something flickered in his expression. Just for a second. That second haunted me for days. Guilt is a quiet monster. Doesn't scream. It whispers. It eats at you in silence, when the world is still and you're alone with yourself. I'd stare at the ceiling at night, wondering how I became this person. How one moment of weakness could make me feel so permanently damaged. I didn't reach out to Darren again. I didn't need to. The damage was done. Whatever we had wasn't real. It was just an escape. A mirror reflecting back the parts of me I missed. But it came at a cost I hadn't fully calculated. Not yet. But I could feel it coming. It unraveled slowly. Not with some dramatic confession or angry confrontation. Just a growing silence that stretched between us, louder than any words. He started noticing. The way I avoided his touch. The way my smile didn't reach my eyes anymore. He'd ask if everything was okay, and I'd say yes every time, more out of habit than intention. But even I could hear the lie in my voice. One night, he looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time in months, maybe years. Not the version of me I pretended to be, but the hollowed-out truth. And in that moment, I knew I couldn't keep pretending. Not because I wanted to save the marriage, but because I couldn't carry the weight of it anymore. Told him. I said it plainly. I didn't try to justify it. I didn't cry. I just laid it down like something rotten I needed to get rid of. His face didn't change much. He just sat there, quiet, like the words hadn't landed yet. And then, when they finally did, I saw him crack from the inside. He didn't yell. He didn't ask for details. He just asked why. I had no good answer. I said I felt invisible. I said I was lonely. I said I didn't know how to ask for what I needed without sounding ungrateful. He nodded like he was listening, But his eyes were somewhere else entirely. Somewhere I couldn't reach anymore. He didn't kick me out. He didn't beg me to stay either. For a while we just existed in the same space, strangers who used to be something more. I wanted to believe we could come back from it. That this could be our breaking point and our rebuilding point. But deep down I knew that trust doesn't grow back. Not the same way. I stayed with a friend for a while. Gave him space. Let him breathe without me there, poisoning the air. People asked questions. Gave vague answers. I didn't want sympathy or judgment. I wanted distance. I needed to look in the mirror without flinching. It's been months now. We're still in contact, but everything's different. There's no warmth in his voice anymore. Just politeness. Like I'm a guest in a life I used to belong to. We haven't decided what happens next. Maybe we separate. Maybe we try therapy. Or maybe this is just the quiet before the end. I think about Darren sometimes, but not in the way I used to. Not with longing. With clarity. He wasn't the answer. He was the distraction. And I let him become the reason I stopped facing my real problems. The hardest part isn't losing what we had. It's realizing I was the one who broke it. Can't undo it. I can't go back to the moment before I crossed the line. All I can do now is live with the knowledge that I did.